Hey everyone, it's Miss Joyce. Today we'll be adding and subtracting mixed numbers with unlike denominators within word problems with no regrouping. Nyla talks on the phone to her friends for 2 2/5 hours on Saturday and 1 3/4 hours on Sunday. How long did Nyla spend talking on the phone to her friends over the weekend? Well, first, she talked for 2 2/5 hours on Saturday. She also talked for 1 3/4 more hours on Sunday. We want to find out how long she spent talking on the phone over the entire weekend. So we're going to be adding these two mixed numbers together. If we look carefully, we can see that the denominators, which are the numbers on the bottom, are not the same. We need to create equivalent fractions so that the denominators are the same so we can add them. To do this, we're going to list out our multiples of 5 and then of 4, since those are our denominators in our fractions. Our multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. Now we'll list the multiples of 4, which are 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. If you look carefully at both of these lists, we can see that the number 20 is found in both lists. This means that when we create equivalent fractions, our common denominator is going to be 20. So let's rewrite 2 2/5 in 20ths. Here we know the denominator is going to be 20. We know that 5 times 4 equals 20. So since we're multiplying by 4 on the bottom, we're also going to multiply by 4 on the top. 2 times 4 is 8. And now if you look at the whole number, which is the number in front, we see that we have 2 wholes. That's going to stay the same. We're going to keep this as 2 wholes because we're just breaking this into more pieces, but we still have the same total amount shaded. Now let's do the same for 1 3/4. We're going to rewrite this so that the denominator is 20. So we know that 4 times 5 equals 20. Since we're multiplying by 5 on the bottom, we're going to multiply by 5 on the top. 3 times 5 is 15. We can see that there is the 1 whole in the front. So in our equivalent mixed number, we are going to put 1 whole in the front as well. 1 3/4 equals 1 15/20. So we're going to be adding now our equivalent fractions, which were 2 8/20 plus 1 15/20. When we add those together, we get 3 23/20. So Nyla talks on the phone for 3 hours and 23/20 of another hour. Later on, we're going to learn how to rewrite this in a simplified form. Now let's try another problem. Mackay is visiting a friend in New Hampshire over the weekend. It usually takes Mackay 1 2/3 hours to get to his friend's house, but there is so much traffic over the weekend that it took him 2 3/4 hours. How much longer did it take Mackay to get to his friend's house over the weekend than it usually does? Well, we can see that it normally takes an hour and 1 2/3 hours, but this time it took 2 3/4 hours. We're trying to figure out how much longer it took, so we're going to be subtracting these fractions. We're going to first write 2 3/4 hours because this is the longer amount. We're going to subtract 1 2/3 hours. We can see that our denominators are not the same. So we need to create equivalent fractions so that we have common denominators. To do that, we're going to list the multiples of each of the denominators. So we'll start with 4. The multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. Now we'll list the multiples of 3, since 3 is the second denominator. We have 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. If we look carefully at both of these lists, we can see that 12 is found in both lists. That means 12 is going to be our common denominator. So we are going to rewrite each of these mixed numbers so that the denominator is 12. So we'll start by having our fraction line, and on the bottom we'll put 12. Now let's think, what do we multiply by 4 to get to 12? Well, 4 times 3 equals 12. Since we're multiplying by 3 on the bottom, we can also multiply by 3 on the top. 3 times 3 is 9. We can see that there's the whole number 2 in the front. So in our equivalent fraction, we're going to put the whole number 2 in front of our equivalent fraction. 2 3/4 is equivalent to 2 9/12. Let's do the same for 1 2/3. We're going to create an equivalent fraction where the denominator is 12. Let's think, what do we multiply by 3 to get to 12? Well, 3 times 4 equals 12. So since we're multiplying by 4 on the bottom, we're going to multiply by 4 on the top. 2 times 4 is 8. If we look, we can see there's a 1 whole in front, so we need to make sure we also include the 1 whole in front of our equivalent fraction. 1 2/3 is equivalent to 1 8/12. Now that these mixed numbers both have 12 as our denominator, we can subtract 2 9/12 minus 1 8/12. So here we have 2 minus 1 is 1. 9/12 minus 8/12 is 1/12. So it took Nakai 1 1/12 hour longer to drive to New Hampshire that weekend. Now let's try another. Natalia and Eliana are having a jumping contest. Natalia jumps 2 2/5 yards. Eliana jumps 3/4 yards. What is the total distance that the cousins jumped? So we can see that Natalia is jumping 2 2/5 yards, while Eliana is jumping 3/4 yards. We want to find the total distance, so we're going to be adding these fractions together. If you look carefully, we can see that the denominators are not the same. So we're going to create equivalent fractions where the denominators are the same. To do this, we're going to list out the multiples of each denominator, starting with 5, since 5 is the denominator of our first fraction. We have 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. Now we'll list out the multiples of 4, since 4 is the denominator of our second fraction. We have 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. If you look carefully at both of these lists, we can see that the number 20 is in both lists. So that means when we create equivalent fractions, our denominator is going to be 20. So let's start with 2 2/5. Here, we're going to create an equivalent fraction where the 20 is our denominator. We can already start by putting the 2 wholes in the front, since when we create equivalent fractions, we are not adding or subtracting any wholes, we're just breaking the wholes into smaller pieces. So now let's see what our missing numerator is. Let's ask ourselves, 5 times what equals 20? Well, 5 times 4 equals 20. So since we're multiplying by 4 on the bottom, we're going to multiply by 4 on the top. 2 times 4 is 8. So 2 2/5 is equivalent to 2 8/20. Let's do the same for 3/4. Here, we know our denominator is going to be 20. Let's ask ourselves, what do we multiply by 4 to get to 20? Well, 4 times 5 equals 20. So since we're multiplying by 5 on the bottom, we're going to multiply by 5 on the top. 3 times 5 equals 15. So now both of these equivalent fractions have a denominator of 20. We can go ahead and add these. We have 2 8/20 plus 15/20. When we add these together, we get 2 23/20. Notice in this second mixed number, there's nothing in front, there's no wholes. So we're essentially adding 2 plus nothing, or 0, equals 2, which is why we keep the 2 in front. 8/20 plus 15/20 equals 23/20. So the total distance that the cousins jumped is 2 23/20 yards. Let's try one more. Miss Milanese enters her prize-winning pigs in the county fair. The first pig, Petunia, weighs 8 3/4 pounds. Her second pig, Wilbur, weighs 2 2/3 pounds. Her third pig, Ophelia, weighs 5 1/2 pounds. How much do the 3 pigs weigh in all? All right, so if we look, we can see that the first pig is 8 3/4 pounds. The second pig is 2 2/3 pounds. And the last pig is 5.5 pounds. We want to figure out how much they weigh in all. So we're going to be adding these fractions together. Well, we can see with all three of these fractions, there are different denominators. We're going to create equivalent fractions so that we have common denominators in order to add them. To do this, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing when we've only had two mixed numbers. We're going to list the multiples. So since 4 is the denominator of our first fraction, we're going to list the first 5 multiples of 4, which are 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. Now we can list the multiples of 3, which is 3, 6, 9, 12, and 15. Now we'll list the multiples of 2, since 2 is the denominator of our last fraction. We have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Well, we need to find a number that is found in all three lists. If we look carefully, there's actually no numbers right now. But if we listed one more multiple of 2, we could see that 12 is a multiple that is found in all three lists. So that means 12 is going to be our common denominator. So let's rewrite each of these mixed numbers where the denominator is 12. So we know in this equivalent fraction, our denominator is going to be 12. Let's ask ourselves, what do we multiply by 4 to get to 12? Well, 4 times 3 equals 12. So since we're multiplying by 3 on the bottom, let's multiply by 3 on the top. 3 times 3 is 9. Remember, the 8 in our whole number is going to stay the same. So 8 3/4 is equivalent to 8 9/12. We'll do the same for 2 2/3. Will we rewrite it where the denominator is 12? So let's ask ourselves, what do we multiply by 3 to get to 12? Well, 3 times 4 equals 12. So since we're multiplying by 4 on the bottom, we can multiply by 4 on the top. 2 times 4 is 8. And remember, that whole number in front is going to stay the same. So 2 2/3 is the same as 2 8/12. We'll do finally 5 1/2, where we rewrite it so the denominator is 12. Let's ask ourselves, what do we multiply by 2 to get to 12? Well, 2 times 6 equals 12. So since we're multiplying by 6 on the bottom, we can multiply by 6 on the top. 1 times 6 is 6, and the whole number in the front stays the same. So now we have 3 mixed numbers that all have a denominator of 12. So we can add these mixed numbers together. We're going to add 8 9/12 plus 2 8/12 plus 5 6/12. So if we add carefully, we can start with the wholes. 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 5 is 15. We know the denominator is going to be 12, and if we add the numerators, 9 plus 8 is 17, plus 6 is 23. So all three pigs, when they're weighed together, weigh 15 and 23/12 pounds.